All right, everybody, welcome to class 2, part 3, tonalism, mystery, memory, and imagination. In this part, we are finally stepping up to the easel. Class is over in 9 minutes, so I got to paint fast. But I wanted to show you guys basically using my recommended split primary palette, and then we can still do tonalist painting. So, you know, hopefully you guys are able to spend some time with me. If not, the class is recorded and will be there for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take those bright colors. Well, actually, I got 3 yellows up there, 2 reds and 2 blues. On the left, I've got titanium white. Then I have cadmium lemon, I think. Cadmium yellow deep. In the middle, that little orangey one there is Indian yellow. That is a guest color in this actual palette. And we'll see if maybe I'll try to avoid using it because that's my go-to color so often. Then I've got cadmium red light. I've got quinacridone red, ultramarine blue, and manganese blue. If you are, not writing these down, this is just my general recommended painting list. It's on our Padlet. It's on my website underneath my classes. So you can just see, this is the palette that I used for years and years and years. And like I said, I would invite a guest color every once in a while, like a transparent earth red or a burnt umber or the Indian yellow. The Indian yellow has basically made its way onto my palette all the time. In fact, the cadmium yellow deep or medium, I'm not sure which one that is generally not on my palette, but I squeezed it out just because that is on my suggested supply list. What I'm going to try to do is do a very earthy, quick painting, and then the main point I'm going to do is start it differently than I did last week. Last week I did 2 paintings using big shapes, one with acrylics, one with oils, and doing a subtractive painting with oils. This time I'm actually going to draw it out like a cartoon, which I think is much more instinctual for so many painters. And I really debated back and forth whether or not to do the first class with this style. But what I want to show you is that I have 3 different ways of starting a painting. And it just depends on the subject. It depends on the scene. It depends on my mood. It depends on a lot of things. So are we all good? Everybody, any questions?
Nope.
And I'm going to be using a reference that is a painting I've done a number of times. This is a creek right over the hill from me. So big shapes, big values. There's a lot of detail and information in there if I want to get to it. So what I did was I just mixed up a little bit of my quinacridone red and my ultramarine blue to make kind of a purpley color here. And I'm just going to use that to kind of draw, maybe even add a little more red to it. So it's a little bit on the warmer side. You can use whatever colors you want for this. For your just kind of sketching in, I'm just going to put in my horizon line, which is pretty much the first thing I do in almost all my landscapes. And I'm doing this one pretty quickly. Again, the class is over in 5 minutes, but so I just kind of wanted to get something in quickly and just show you. And what I'm doing here is I'm just looking for the big, important shapes, angles, movement. So I'm using, in the last class, we used big shapes. Now you're going to see line as a design element, again, which I think is much more just how people think. Sorry, I'm painting and talking. I think this way of painting makes a lot more sense to beginning painters. And I'm not against it. I just am not as attracted to it. It doesn't excite me as much. Because it's not as abstract. I'm kind of thinking like, okay, there's my creek. You'll see that I kind of use straight lines a lot of the time. They'll become more loose and gestural. Now I've got my band of trees back here. So hopefully you can already kind of see my big shapes, right? So now is what I will do with these colors is I'm going to mix up a dark, because I like to paint from dark to light, big shapes to small shapes, and from thin paint to thick paint. So all these lines were done. I didn't add a lot of paint. It's just kind of scrubbed on there, almost like a nice runny or a nice fast, like a pen, like an ink pen. So to make a dark, I'm going to take my ultramarine blue, and this is not a color mixing class. That will be this winter. So if anybody's interested in really learning a lot about color mixing, but you can already see by taking my ultramarine blue and mixing it with my cadmium red medium, it creates a very, very dark, what I would consider like a plum color. And what I'm going to do actually is take just a touch, just a little bit of yellow, because that's kind of a purpley color. And this yellow is going to neutralize that purple. It's a way of mixing across the color wheel. And now I've got a very dark, dark color. Isn't that amazing? It's almost black. Let's grab a slightly bigger brush. This was a little teeny guy that I was using just to sketch out my line. So I'm going to grab a little bit bigger. Maybe I'll even grab bigger than that. Let's go ahead and grab a size 8. And let's just use some of those darks. And what I'm going to do is use these darks to kind of develop my shadows and my dark areas to kind of help me.
Michael, would you mind showing us the reference photo so we can kind of see what you're looking at while you're doing this? Thank you.
I can probably put it here.
That'd be great.
Grab a little bit of tape.
That might help.
But I'm not going to worry about it too much. Going to be one of those loosely inspired by. How does that look? I want a little bit more mixing area. Is that still fitting on the scene?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So now I'm just looking into the darks.
Is that a textured board you're using or a smoother one?
Oh, it's unfortunately very smooth. A little smoother than I would have hoped for. That's all right. And next week, we'll come back in and color some of these a little more and really think about how do we make these into all the beautiful tones and everything. So next week, I'll do the full, maybe even today, we'll see. Using the full color palette. Yeah, that's what we'll do this week, next week. And then the week after, we'll go into using a very limited and earthy palette, almost as a shortcut. But I think maybe it's important to see that we can make all these colors, even with high chroma, very dramatic, pure colors. So can you guys kind of see by just using those darks how I'm helping to describe the scene a little bit? I'm going to pull this down a little bit. So do you see also it's much more cartoony, right? It's almost got the outlines. Now I'm like coloring into it.
Sometimes I
start
get
mixing
confused when
red.
I'm doing like on the right, the riverbank there, where the reflection and the above and the below are divided. When I'm just painting in the darks there, it's like, do I bring it all the way down and then paint the little white line across?
Yeah, I generally kind of will.
Mhm.
Because I'm not thinking things, Michelle. I'm just thinking values.
That's right.
Yeah, but I could easily, even with the back of my brush, if like I'm getting lost and I don't know where I'm at.
Exactly. Thank you.
But even though I'm like in this kind of way of painting and way of approaching a painting, it feels like I'm painting things. Like I was kind of like, here's my creek, here's my land, here's my tree line, here's my sky. I still really don't want to think about things. I want to think about big shapes. So this is where I'm a little nervous about having the reference on here because I want to mix some colors. So let's mix a couple dirty yellow ochre is a constant color my students, and historically have said, well, I like your palette, but I need to have yellow ochre or I need to have a burnt umber. So let's make a yellow ochre. I'm going to take some of this lemon yellow, a little of this yellow, a little of this red, and just a touch of this blue. And all of a sudden I have a yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is just now it turns to green a little bit and brings back some more yellow. All these colors, these browns, these burnt umbers, they're all really easy to make. They're all just dirty versions of a color, if that's how you want to think about it, or tertiary, they're all mixed. So let's make a burnt umber. I'm just going to grab some reds. And a lot of times, almost every one of my colors has all my colors in it, just to varying amounts.
Mhm.
So obviously not burnt umber, right? That's just a hot red. So let's bring in some blue. Still not there. Bring in more blue. So much closer. And I don't care to make exactly a burnt umber out of the tube. I just need to make a color that's going to work on my painting. One of the biggest questions I get is how do I make brown? How do I make green? And what I want you to ask yourself is what brown, what green? So I've got this brown here. Let's make a bright reddish brown. Basically, to make a brown is all three, red, yellow, and blue. All right, let's make a greenish brown. Grabbing both my blues, blue and yellow make green. I didn't clean my palette knife, so it's already nice and contaminated. Add a little red to that. Got a very nice dark green. Let's add some more yellow to that over to the side because I already like that green.
And the neat thing is all those colors are unified because you used one palette to create them all. You didn't use 12 tubes of paint.
Right. I mean, I don't even know if those are the colors I want, but I love that transition already.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Right. And even the dark green is very warm because there's quite a bit of red in it. So I could add a little more blue on the backside to make a cool. So now I've got a transition from a cool to a dark warm to a mid to a light. Let's take that light and make it hot. So I took
Michael,
just a touch of it.
Michael, do you mix color with brushes sometime, or is like palette knife?
I mean, yeah, but it's a lot easier to get clean colors by just, my palette knife's perfectly clean. When I'm mixing big piles, I typically will mix with my palette knife But then after I get my big piles established, then I will start mixing in between those colors with my brush.
When I try to like mute a color like a little bit, for example, I made a like pile of green and I want to like mute it to like different level. Sometimes I mix red. It becomes like either too much and yeah, hard to control the muteness. Do you have any suggestion for that?
Yes, definitely. Just know that any of your cadmium colors, if you're using a cadmium red, it is so strong. A little dab will do you. Your transparent colors are generally weaker. Hansa colors or any of the like quinacridone, manganese blue, all those
Crimson.
colors are weaker. Yeah. So you'll learn that. Unfortunately, that comes a little bit by work. The other thing is, sorry, Gail, I'm going to take this down so I can mix a big pile. Let's do a mother color. Like what's the color? If you guys just squint your eye, what's the mother color of this scene?
Raw umber.
Brownish green.
Raw umber, which is a brownie green. So let's just make a big pile of raw umber. I don't even know what raw umber is, but what color is raw umber?
It's brown.
Yeah, but what kind of brown?
Brownish green.
Brownish green. So there you go. I've got a big pile of raw umber. Just kidding. It's the opposite of raw umber, right? That as far as browns are concerned, it's very, very, very red. Okay, so what should I do to make that into more of a greenish brown?
Yellow
Yellow
and
and blue. Blue?
Blue and yellow, little.
Yeah.
blue.
So I know that this yellow is pretty weak. So now I'm adding more of it. It's like adding an herb that you want to be flavorful in your food, but it's not strong, right?
Yeah.
Like I know that certain herbs are strong. A little bit of garlic will go a long ways. I know a little bit of cayenne will go a long ways, right? But salt, maybe I need more of or whatever else. So I'm going to do quite a bit of yellow and I'm just going to add a little bit of blue because the blue is pretty dark, right? Let's just see.
Maybe a little too orange still.
More blue. More yellow.
More. Okay, yeah, you guys tell me.
More yellow. No.
More
more
yellow.
more
We want to
blue.
make it.
More
More
blue.
blue.
Okay.
And a little yellow maybe.
So then I jumped too far, right?
Right.
And this is exactly where I wanted to get
Mix
Hassan to show you. So not a bad color. I can use this in some of my darks, right? But what's happening is I'm getting a great big pile of paint, right? So now every time I want to modify this pile of paint, it's going to take more and more and more color. I call it the blob that eats the world, right? If you just keep mixing this pile. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some of that color aside. So now I've got a smaller pile and this will still harmonize with this.
Mhm.
And now I don't have to mix, all my paints. Are we getting there?
Mhm.
Yep.
Better.
So that's how I do it, Hassan, is like a lot of times I just have to pull some paint away because otherwise, again, eventually you have this huge pile of paint and no paint left up here because, you just keep modifying it and modifying it and modifying it. So I can take, that pile I mixed and say, you know what, that's going to be a great color on the lighter area. So let's just lighten that really quickly. It's beautiful. It's red. It's warm. So I can put that over here because it's still related to this color, right? Let's take this color, which was yellower, and mix that. And you see how these three still work together?
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
take some of this, add some darker blue, maybe a little bit of the dark cool red. Got pretty dark. Let's lighten that up a little bit. Still, see how this family is related?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's
Really
take a little bit of this, but because I'm using my palette knife, I can clean it just that fast. So I'm not, you know, all of a sudden taking my paint over here that if I was using a brush to mix and bringing it over here, all of a sudden this would get much darker. So let's take some of this over, add more yellow. Still, this family communicates and relates.
Would you ever use white to lighten it or not?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Try to avoid that.
Let's speak like we're going back along this line back into the trees. I can add a little white. Yeah, and there's times in the shadows, like even in these colors, where just a little bit of white might make a beautiful color. I could make a grayed down version of each of these, but I got to be careful because white gets chalky really fast. Oftentimes, especially when I'm going from the cools to the warms, white is not the answer. It is yellow to lighten. Let's do a quick experiment. I'm going to take this dark little area. I'm going to mix it back into a pile. Take some of this, take some of this. I just want to make kind of a dark area, a dark color. And let's see the difference. Grab a little blue. So I've got just basically a dark pile of what could be considered a hideous color. Unless it's put in the right place, then it's the most gorgeous color ever, right? It's kind of a dark greeny militaristic color. So let's take one pile on one side, one pile on the other side. Let's mix this one. Well, I'm going to go white because that's most artists' instinct, and not very much, just a touch. And what happens to that color?
It becomes
It
chalky.
Very chalky.
Right. Which might be useful versus that. And I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong. It's just being aware of, here's mixing yellow into that pile, that's that cool pile. So you have one warm side, one cool side. And this is what I'll do a lot of times when I kind of got a design, you know, roughed out, especially if it's, I'm going to paint on top of a dry underpainting, is I will just mix colors. And I can look at this now and I can say, okay, I like this family, but I don't care anything about this family. This didn't work out. But because I'm using harmonious colors, I don't have to throw this palette knife load of paint away. I've just made probably a really beautiful neutral gray that's still related. Yep. And with this pile, I can do the exact same thing. Go, oh, it'd be nice to have a little bit more red in that pile. Oh, it'd be nice to have a little more yellow in that pile. A little more blue. So now maybe what I'm doing is creating a foreground, stronger chroma towards the front, towards the front of the painting. And a more subdued grayed down colors that maybe work better in my background. Still related, still with harmony. Is that too much? I'm talking so fast and covering so much.
No, not too much.
No, this is great.
Awesome. Now I'm gonna have to take your color mixing class.
You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole thing is a promotion for a class I don't teach for 3 months.
Yeah, but I'm gonna take it again.
That's good business.
Yeah, I mean, besides tonalism, it's my favorite class. Just kidding. I say that about every class. I really love color. You know, I think a lot of people consider me more of a tonalist, but I love color. And I love understanding how to bounce it off. So even with all these muted earthy colors, right? We just all of a sudden go, okay, well, maybe in the sky, we want to add some drama, right? Ah, look how that plays, that salmon color against all these. And all of a sudden I paint the salmon color and it makes me want to paint an olive green to play off it. Even though I'll use all these other colors, let's do a kind of olive, which will be a more reddish, darkest green. Just to see how they play off each other.
Nice.
Perfect green.
Mm-hmm.
And now if I have that, I probably want to have a neutral communicating between these. So kind of a transition color. And again, I'm just going to step back here and show you guys, this palette is super tiny for me. Normally, my palette is this big.
Oh,
So I have a whole lot of room. And there's days where I'll spend like a whole hour of just mixing these palettes and just seeing what kind of harmony. And a lot of times in these stages, I'm like, you know, this is nice, but I like this more. What if I, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden I just change this to a black and white. I disregard all the color and I just make up my own colors. Just because I just care more about harmony and more about whatever feeling. And that's why I can paint the same scene over and over too, is because I can just change it by mixing, you know, a whole new color palette.
I noticed that you're not using as much well, now you're in Indian red, but or yellow. You hadn't been using much of that.
Yeah, that was purposeful. I'm going to go ahead and even take it and set it aside so I don't use it. I like the transparency of Indian yellow, and it does make beautiful colors, but I think this will be a little simpler. But I mean, this one, so like this is another great thing about kind of pre-mixing colors, like getting my design, getting some base values, and then pre-mixing my colors. That's in the handout that I gave you guys today. Let's look at this, right? Ignore my Indian yellow, ignore these colors. So we're looking right here, right? Harmony, 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 maybe no. Right? Does that one stick out like a sore thumb to you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be useful and it could be like a focal point or something, but maybe I just go, okay, let's just neutralize that a little bit of green with that red. And all of a sudden it comes into play. I just took the other color and introduced it. And now this color is the one that's sticking out like a sore thumb. I've got a little bit left on my palette knife. Let's just see. Does that not make your heart rate go down
It
when I neutralize and harmonize these colors with the rest?
it excites me.
Well, okay, good. But it makes my chest not hurt. I look at it, I'm like, you know, okay, I like that. I like that. I like that. Oh, I don't like what's going on here. Okay, what do I do? Neutralize it down. All right.
And the values are all very close together.
Yeah, we're gonna have to experiment with that. I might have to do some darkening and lightening. So I'm just gonna scribble these colors on here real fast and let's just see how they play. So I like to paint dark to light, generally thin to thick. So I'm gonna start with my darks. I'm gonna do a little more scrubbing to keep them a little lighter. It's gonna be, the surface is quite slick. So there'll probably be some light showing through. And I'm just gonna do this pretty quickly. I can let it, you know, tack up and come back and revisit it, but I want to just show you guys my paper towel here. Let's go to the next color. Next value, a little later. Just using a big flat brush here. And I'm just testing. I'm just going to get this thing covered and see how these colors play together. Do they love each other? Do they create a nice harmonious family? And the truth is, a lot of times, especially on a white canvas, I can't hardly tell till I get that canvas covered.
Another question about color muting, Michael.
Please.
So when you mute a color, like you mix the opposite color, of course, but if you mix gray, like you make like different gray value and probably like mix the appropriate gray to mute it down. Is there any difference or?
Yes, because you're adding white to that. So it's going to
Right.
be a much lower chroma, much more grayed down in a, I like to think of white as a color almost, or almost as a temperature. White is very, very cool. So yeah, remind me of that question next week, and maybe we'll revisit that and we can do some experimenting to see what that would look like. But yes, it can work. It can definitely work. There's times where gray is the greatest thing I can do to neutralize a color. But a lot of times what I do is just all of a sudden lose color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
Right now I'm just kind of trying to make a dark purple. Kind of a grayed down dark purple to push these because I don't want such vibrant colors back here. Let's get into, I'm just gonna almost treat this like a posterization of a painting. Just kind of a block in. I just lied. I grabbed into the Indian yellow. It's just instinct. I just know that it's going to warm up the color a lot. So I could do this much slower, and I typically would do this much slower and much more refined. But I just want to show you guys that I'm just going to posterize, just really block in some big areas. See if my colors are playing nicely together. See if my values are reading. And you can see how hard it is to see those colors because of these bright lights, right? So I'm going to want to just kind of get things covered as quickly as possible so I can start to read colors against each other. A color on the palette almost means nothing until you get it on the painting beside the other colors. A color completely becomes a different color or appears to be a different color when it's beside another color. So So I can take a dull green and put it next to a red or a pink and make that green appear much more vibrant. And that goes with any color when you put it next to its opposite or a different value. So it's really hard. A lot of times students just like, I'm mixing these colors on my palette, but they appear so different when I get them on the painting. And that's because they're just beside different colors. I used to be so careful when I started paintings and so scared. And now I just scrub and scribble in that whole 30 brush stroke paint challenge and all these different things that I do just to force myself to loosen up and not care, because I know that I can keep layering this paint. I can remove the paint. I can just keep testing.
How do you remove the paint? Just wiping away, or
Wipe it off with my paper towel or with my palette knife. Let's just say that color didn't work.
Yeah, got it.
I just need to get most of it off. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let's darken that color. Let's bring that water forward. I'm going to bring even some of the colors from the painting into it. This part's a little crazy, but
Good.
Oh,
I'll bring some of that sky color down. It's reflecting on those nice blondie, dry fall grasses. Let's describe our trees. Let's get into some of these darks. Nice thing too about having a lot of paint on here is now I can literally use the paint that's on there too. Sculpt and move. It's kind of like the opposite of the removal process. I can literally just push. It's like having a lot of wet clay to make my sculpture. Instead of adding a lot of clay, I can now move the clay around. And I don't expect you guys to do all these different techniques and all these different ways. I've been painting for a long time and I've made a lot of messy, bad paintings. But what I love all these ways of painting. I love the fact that there's a half a pound of paint on this, whereas the painting I did last week had almost no paint because I'd wiped it all back and removed it. I love having these different ideas. When I went out and plein air painted this week, I did only just wet into wet into wet into wet, and doesn't look anything like my other paintings, but it was so fun and so liberating. And again, I'm ADHD. I know that. My body just doesn't want to do the same style over and over and over. If you're lucky, or, you know, whatever your way of painting is, sorry about that. You know, maybe you just find the one way that works for you. I'm always jealous of my friends that just have one way of approaching a painting and do it every time, because it seems like it'd be a lot easier to master. But my body brain just doesn't want to do that. So conversely, I just keep playing and experimenting and figuring out different ways to make a painting. But do you see the harmony in there?
Yes.
Right? I can come back in and I can add all the detail in the world. I could, you know, add little individual grasses and, you know, I can just keep building into this all I want, but I kind of like it's super, at least for this second. Wait till I go away and come back. But right now I kind of like it's just gestural, soft, just juiciness. And for some of you, you're going to be like, yeah, I want to paint like Monet. I want to paint thick and juicy. And others of you are going to be like, no, I want to paint, you know, dry and controlled and with all these transparencies. There's no transparency in this painting right now, right? It's all thick application. It's all about the light hitting the paint itself, versus in the subtractive paintings or painting with the transparent colors. It's about letting the paint get through the light, get through the paint and come back out to us. This is not. This is about letting the light get to the paint itself and bounce back. That's how we're seeing the colors. So it doesn't have that same luminosity. And again, this is very, very loose. I used a great big, I don't know what this is, size 10 brush and lots of paint. So again, whether or not this style is for you or whether or not this approach for you, and with this same approach, I could have definitely taken more time and really refined it. But at the same time, I can still just continue to refine it for as long as I want.
It makes a difference.
Isn't that fun?
Yes.
Like this area here is too dark. I, you know, should probably bring a little light down into there. Should probably clean my brush. I see something else I want to do. I'm going to go ahead and just grab a new brush since I'm not obviously not cleaning my brush. It's hidden behind my the camera. I somehow built a wall. Let's just take a little bit of blue to create some contrast. Blue with white to make these warms.
That's really nice.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so most importantly, this was about lights and darks and design. Secondly, I mean, look at that palette. Thirdly, just this is a test. I mean, I can literally just put this under the fan and start painting on it in a day or two. I'll just add it to the pile of 40 other paintings.
Can
But
can you turn off the light so it's not so glary, please?
Yep. Let me see if I raise the camera and aim it down. A little bit better. Let's turn on it right up.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and then the other thing I can't do, you know, normally I brush it out so all the brush strokes are the same angle, but I can't do that probably with this juiciness. So let's look at this for 10, 20 more seconds, appreciate it, and then I'm going to wipe it back off.
No. Hey, Michael, if you leave it like it is with the light on, but then tilt the top edge forward, just with your hand, just for a moment before you take it away.
Well, let's try it. I'll just.
That makes the difference.
That helps.
That's good to know. Yeah, and I tilted my whole easel since the last class. But I'm not gonna wipe it away. What I'm gonna do though is the same thing that I do with the other paintings. I'm just gonna brush it out. And now it's gonna become a tonalist. I mean, it already kind of is a tonalist painting, right? It's got a harmony, it's got innate simplicity. So let's just do the sky real quick. Let's do the trees. The grasses. It's very soft now. I liked it much better before, but that's all right.
Why did you decide to do it?
I don't know, just to see what would happen.
Ah,
It-
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
so beautiful. It's just, it's slightly different.
And my,
And it, and it does look more tonalist.
it does.
Definitely.
And there's so much paint on there that I can literally just,
Fun.
I guess I mean, I'm just trying to show a lot of things. Like it took me no time, so I don't care. Like, I just want to continue to what if. And you know, I could have taken a photo of it in between. That might have been smart.
I think part of the point is, you know, with all your going over it, if we look at it now, you can see individual trees and you can, you know, there's a suggestion of foliage and leaves back there. And there's certainly a lot of texture in the front that would suggest grass without ever drawing one of them.
Oh, good. That's what I meant to say. Let's just bring some darks back in. Let's mix some darks real quick.
I like that fan brush. It seems to be quite thick.
It is super thick for a fan brush.
Yeah. Okay, I like that.
It's called the Monday Mop. Oh no, it's not the Monday fan brush, I think. Through Rosemary.
I love her brushes.
Oh yeah. But anyways, hopefully that was just fun, and you can just see that, you know, I can just keep experimenting. Worst comes to worst, I just, you know, take my palette knife and start again, or I just let it dry and use some of this information.
That added a lot of drama.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those darks are useful. You want some contrast, probably. Unless I was just painting a real high key painting, but then I'd probably have to make my lights lighter. And we'll talk about that if everybody's like, what the heck is a high key painting? We'll talk about that in future classes. Right? I mean, it went from a real impressionistic, almost Monet-like, thick, juicy painting to very atmospheric and soft, and I can't say which one's better. I did like the early version of it, but I don't care. I already painted it. Let's paint, you know, let's keep seeing what happens. Let's just keep having fun.
Is this the brush you use for adding texture?
Yeah, plus it's the only clean one I could reach, but yeah. Well, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's see. Let's come back in and try some texture. So just grab some old dry brushes and let's remove some paint with just to create texture. So I'm just taking some of those soft edges and beating them up a little. There's so many ways to apply and subtract and just to manipulate paint that if we're not brave, we'll never know. If we're not willing to experiment, if we're not willing to, I don't know if you guys were there at the beginning of class, kill our babies, right? Which I hate that saying, but I also love that saying. But if we're not willing to sacrifice in the pursuit of knowledge, then our knowledge will be so, we'll develop it so much slower.
There's a travel saying on Facebook every now and then that says, if you don't go, you'll never know.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Feels like a lullaby all of a sudden. I went from a what do I like to say, a fiesta to a siesta. Right. And I mean, I can come back in and I can add lots of more details. I could use, Q-tips and everything else. And I could, let this dry and add flowers on top. I can add a red line on top of those trees like I always do.
Glaze. You could glaze.
I can glaze. I can be patient. Yeah. Oh, I like that red. Dang it, I always like the red.
Yes, nicely contrasted.
Especially with those greens, right? Remember when we saw the painting, I'm like, that's my favorite color combination, those yellows and greens and the burnt umbers. Yeah, I mean, it's too much fun. Sorry, I didn't end up with a beautiful painting, but it was a ton of fun to play and experiment, and I can revisit it after it dries up and add detail and add information. I mean, even tomorrow it'll be tacking so that the paint is, not moving around as much. So yeah, that was the third way I approach a painting. Not the way I normally finish a painting, but that was fun. And then using the primary palette to create earthy, subdued browns, greens, ochres. So, sometimes I'll just bring out browns and ochres and greens and paint with those. And other times I'll just mix them from my bright primary colors. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Your homework is to keep playing with this idea of big shapes. If you want to start to experiment with colors, that's fine. But otherwise, just continuing to work on what we were working on last week, especially if you haven't had a chance. Next week, I'm going to show glazing and scumbling. 2 different ways to approach. And I've got 2 underpaintings that are drying right now that I'll use. And I will show you some different ways of applying color.
Sounds good.
Sounds great.
All right.
Thank you, Michael. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
I'll see you guys in a few weeks. I might stop in tomorrow a little bit, but as usual, I'm not packed at all yet. So I'm a last minute packer.
I feel like you should be somebody that just has a go bag, like just always ready to run when the
I used to have more of a go bag than I have now. Yeah, I had just a set of things I could throw in and just pick out whatever clothes I wanted. But traveling in with the weather this year has been interesting. The heat wave is down to in the 70s, and that is going to be perfect
Yes.
over there.
Sounds amazing.
Where are you going?
Italy, in Tuscany.
Fun. Oh, how fun.
Beautiful.
Take lots of
Oh, enjoy.
references.
Yeah.
I'll take lots of pictures.
Yeah.
I'm going to see some old friends that I haven't seen for quite a while, so that'll be nice too.
Yeah. Have a blast.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
am
Well,
joining late tomorrow. but yeah, we'll try to join.
Okay, well, great. Yeah, I look forward to seeing those of you who can join tomorrow. We'll all be shedding a tear for you, Cheryl, that you weren't able to be there and had to go to
Hardly.
Italy. And
Yeah.
you guys are fantastic. Thank you so much for all the great paintings that you added to Padlet. I so very much appreciate. When I went down during the first break after looking at our stuff, I was telling my wife, I'm like, the work is so good. I can't believe it. It's our first day. It's so good. And so you guys thrill me. And again, even if it's not working, even if you feel like it's not doing what you want, please share it. We're all commiserating, we're all learning together, and we learn from the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you guys are fantastic. I really appreciate you spending this extra 40 minutes with me. And yeah, you guys deserve lunch.
No, I deserve wine.
I was just gonna say anything.
It's
It's
after
wine-
4 o'clock. It's close to wine time.
It's
Okay.
after, it's almost 3:30 here, so yeah, it's.
Yeah, it's getting close.
I got busted for pouring wine at 4:30 yesterday. My wife's like, you have to wait till 5.
Yeah. Would
Like,
ask me.
Yeah.
I thought it
It's
was
5 in
four.
the next time zone. Don't worry.
Right.
It's
All
five
right.
somewhere.
Everyone.
Yep.
And maybe I'll let this one dry and we can come back and revisit it. And, you know, it's got nice textures. It's got the beginning of a thing. You know, so I've got a number of underpaintings that we can revisit. And anyways, you guys are fantastic. I always have so much fun, and have a great week. And for those of you who can make it, we'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Michael.
Bye.